Hi, I'm Mary Vandenack, and I apologize for not being there in person today, but appreciate the opportunity to present virtually or by recording. I'm pre-recording this. I've been having a thyroid bout, so I'm recording it while I'm having a good moment. So I am going to talk about artificial estate planning and some of the use cases for the AI in estate planning. And I will let you know that I'm a big advocate of artificial intelligence. Fortunately, we have a presenter on the agenda that will talk about all the ethical issues related to it and considerations, which are very, very important to know and understand so that you can use this as a great tool. I do want to mention a few things in relation to some questions that have come up when I presented on this topic regularly. One of the questions that I was asked at a recent presentation is, well, my phone's ringing off the wall. So why should I really care about artificial intelligence? And I think I'll answer that question a few times during my presentation, but it's a great tool. I think we can improve our profitability. I think we can maximize our rate realization and actually make our lifestyle a little bit better. Private practice of law is not an easy task, even on a good day, even though I love what I do. But the more that we can have some life balance by using tools well, the better. Another question that I was asked at a recent presentation was about, well, what does this do for those of us or for those that don't really want to think? Isn't this going to have people stop thinking? And my response to that is to use an example. When I was growing up, and the story I tell is that my dad used to make us do multiplication and addition in our heads to be able to get dessert. And his point was, well, if you use a calculator for the math, then you're going to weaken your mind. And so part of the use of AI is the same thing. We need to use it in a way that strengthens our critical thinking and that we're continuing to use it. And yes, there will be people that will just rely on artificial intelligence. We're seeing that, and that the growth of the cases in terms of people submitting hallucinations is actually growing rather than reducing, despite how much we've heard about being out there on it. One of the things that is an article written by a friend of mine by the name of Steve Embry, who has a blog, if you wanted to choose to look him up, he wrote an article that was talking about that those who are a little older may be better at having done critical thinking through their career without AI and have a little bit better understanding by nature of how to use AI, but encouraging us not to be afraid of it. Another thing somebody that I read recently was that you can tell where you are age-wise by how many variations of AI you use. So usually if I'm in person, I ask everybody, well, how many people use AI all day, every day? I'm one of those, by the way. How many use it occasionally? I usually get a lot of answers in between. The other question that I like to ask, and so I'm just throwing this out there for you, and you can raise hands even though I'm not there to see you, is how many of you have just one AI program that you use? And the generality is that you're probably a baby boomer or close to it. And I'm on the very end of the baby boomers, or, Generation X. So I'm sort of an X boomer, or whatever they call those of us who are in the middle. But I will tell you that I have 6 or 7 different AI programs that I use for different reasons downloaded just to my phone. And usually what I say is, in case anybody asks me a question that I don't know, I have those with me just in case I can't answer a question. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about AI and estate planning. And some of my objectives today are just to talk about the types of AI, how we can use them in estate planning, some of the use cases. And when I originally did the PowerPoint for this presentation, I had a friend of mine review it. And so friend one that reviewed it said, okay, Mary, you're going to be way over everybody's head with that, so back it off a little bit. But I know that there are some people who are avidly using AI and I won't be. So I actually designed this PowerPoint to try and give some tips for those who are not regularly using it, as well as some just tips for those who are regularly using it. So some of it'll be really simple. Here's some simple things that you can do tomorrow. And here's some more complex ideas. And here are some things that I'm thinking about in terms of where I want to go personally with the use of AI. And I really want to develop an agentic AI system. I look at estate planning as a process. And even though each process is going to have some different steps, there's some elements that are always the same. And technology is well served to do that, which is repeatable and predictable. So that's a little bit of what I want to cover. And so, why should you care? And I did the red box. I believe that AI will actually become an ethical imperative. I won't be there to hear what Natalie says on that, but I'll be interested to know. The reason I think that we already have this is Canadian precedent, not here in the US, but there is a Canadian ruling where an attorney submitted fees and the fees were cut back because of the size of them. And the judge said, well, you could have done this more quickly had you used AI as a tool. Those of us in estate planning, do you know that we have a significant transfer of wealth that is coming up in the future years? AI is transforming how we do things and can dramatically enhance client service. Clients will expect it. I actually have some high net worth clients and others who will ask, well, what do you have for portals, and make a decision about hiring professionals based on portals. So I think it's really important that we have our website in order, that we offer usable, user-friendly portals, that we do find ways to make it easy to communicate it. But I do think, and well, I put on the slide younger generations. I'm seeing a lot of older clients actually expecting us to use technology, including AI. And I've had a 90-some-year-old client sit in my office with answering questions on AI and using AI. Also, I think one of the things is you can stand out. Let's say you're, and what I'm referring to it is the AI enhanced estate planning experience. Be willing to offer that. But one of the things that I have a 21-year-old nephew who is totally all about AI and from what I would call an AI family, and that his family got into an AI business. And what he said to me is, well, Mary, what you want to do is to actually seek to replace yourself with AI, because in doing so, you will be the master of AI in what you do, and people will look to you because you are the one who really knows how to use it for this particular process. I believe you can dramatically increase your realization rate by using process-oriented fees. That can be just several flat fees brought together. When I do estate planning, I actually break it out into a consultation for which I charge. I think you should value your services in a consultation. And then I value for then my next bill is for intake analysis and recommendations, because I think that's where the real value in what I do is. I've done this thousands and thousands and helped a lot of families with this process. Your ability to turn around an accurate and complete estate planning process will be facilitated. You can be less reliant on assistants and paralegals. The paralegals and the legal assistants who will have value will be those who know how to help you enhance the use of AI. I also really think, I feel very strongly that you can get a higher level of job satisfaction. I've always been the happy lawyer who loved what I do. So I used to get held up at conferences. Here's one of the, one of the very few really happy private practice lawyers. But I think it's important. There's some, there is some data that our profession is struggling with a whole lot of things in terms of drugs, alcoholism, and mental health. And so achieving a higher level of job satisfaction is just super important in my mind. So let's talk about exactly what AI is. So using intelligence to solve a problem. Using human intelligence is one way. Now we're developing artificial intelligence, which is machine learning. I talk about, as I bring estate planning into the process, the concept that estate planning is in fact a process. Let's talk about the different types of AI. We have reactive AI, which does not have memory, doesn't store past interactions, rule-based. So your examples of the reactive AI, spam filters, autocorrect. You might have a pre-programmed estate planning intake form that if somebody responds single, will change the questions that are asked thereafter. That's reactive AI. I had a question and answer type sheet like that that I built out in Hot Docs. That would be an example. The generative AI creates new contents or outputs based on patterns in the training data. So it's limited memory. An example for estate planning, drafting assistant that generates first draft of wills, trust letters based on responses to prompts. So again, I built out all of my documents in Hot Docs. That would be an example. Value is you can draft more quickly. The risks here are the hallucinations. Generative AI can hallucinate. I did add ethical notes to these slides, but I know we have a presenter talking specifically to those issues, so I'm just going to talk about the uses. Adaptive AI continuously improves by learning from new data or feedback. It refines based on the user corrections. So this gets smarter with use. Google Maps is an example of adaptive AI. Distinguishing the generative from adaptive. So the generative trains on large data sets, so your large language models, where adaptive is continuously learning. You can have a system that is both, but the adaptive AI that is not generative doesn't hallucinate. And so this is why it's important to know what type of system am I using. What are its limitations? What can it do? What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? So those are some of the questions when it comes to technological competence in the use of AI to ask, to learn, to educate yourself about what type of assistant is this so that I can adapt. If I know I'm using a large language model that is going to hallucinate. So I just go out on Chat GPT and start asking questions. That's one of the places that we can see hallucinations. I need to know that this can hallucinate and know that I need to fact check. Agentic AI is in an evolutionary stage. I like to talk about it because I believe that agentic AI is developing very quickly. I think just a year ago, I was doing presentations that were technology and ethics, that we covered cybersecurity and we covered several other issues, the remote practice, and AI was just part of that general discussion. But that's evolved. So the year later, I'm talking about AI for full presentations. And it used to always be ethics in AI, where now we're splitting up the estate planning uses. So the agentic AI typically go ahead and start planning that you're going to build one out. So right now, I haven't found one in the legal world that does all the things that I want to do. There are some models that are developing for law. My goal is to take that estate planning process and have an agentic AI that can facilitate a significant portion of the process. Just showing that this slide comparing the different types of AI was actually created by AI. I can't remember what I was using. So again, I mentioned that I use 5 or 6 different AI systems, but I created this. Is this totally perfect? I think this is okay. I would put some more detail if I were creating this slide in myself. But bottom line is, even in terms of preparing for presentations, it's really important to start looking at what can I do with AI to speed up the process. So I do a fair amount of presentations, and AI gives me a lot of help in moving those along and actually does some slide design. So in law, we have to be really careful about the copyright rules. I've added a few slides because one of the things that have come up in recent presentations that I have done is the closed system versus the open system. So there are some who have come up to me and said, well, if I have a closed personal system, then isn't that system just going to learn everything about me and be able to get to know me and it's just going to basically be my agentic AI. And it's not quite that simple. So so the open AI, I go onto the internet, I go out onto Chat GPT or Copilot or another system. I don't have a personal license. I don't have any kind of security wrapped around it. That is open AI. It's public. The big risk there is that the data that I put out into that. So I go ask it questions about a client. Let's say I don't use the client name, but I use facts sufficient to identify the client. That's a confidentiality issue. The closed personal AI is so I get a closed system, then I don't have the same issues with the data in terms of being disclosed to the public. I still classify my data in terms of, hey, this is like totally public information. This is highly confidential. This is my client's financial data and all the information that I have about them. The thing is that both models, open or closed, are still large language models if you're using something like Copilot or Chat GPT. The big difference isn't that it's going to learn everything about you and get to know you. It can, by the way, and I'll talk more about that. But I just want to point out that it's not constantly retraining. The closed AI was trained before you got it. So there's ways to train it and there's ways to use it that will make it get to know you. But there was a few people that came to me and thought that closed personal AI meant that it's just going to keep learning from anything that I enter. And it's not quite that simple in terms of what it can do. The way you can personalize a closed AI large language model, and I use Copilot a lot. Our firm's also experimenting with Harvey, but your base layer is whatever large language model that you use. And I don't advocate for any particular model. I'm just sharing about Copilot because that's the one I use the most in my legal practice. There are a lot of products out there. A question I get asked a lot is, well, which product should I use? And what I suggest is that the best thing to do is to hire a consultant that knows all of the different types of AI. Talk to them about your practice. And I think this is true of every technology. The product that is amazingly fabulous for your attorney friend may not be the one that's right for you because you may practice differently. But my goal has been to take my nephew's advice and replace myself to the extent I can so that I can focus on the higher level critical thinking and relationships. So one of the things I talk about is, okay, as AI gets smarter, how do I remain relevant? And I will circle back to that. But base layer is a large language model. Again, this in Copilot, it does not retrain itself. So what you need to do is learn, well, what strategies can I do so that it emulates what I'm doing? On a very simple level, let's say that I want to create a general summary, something I do as part of the estate planning process. And I have a document that was a template that I used in Hot Docs that I programmed so that we could input the client basic data and then create this document that says, here's kind of all the basic information about the client. So instead of me pouring through all of their documents that they brought in, I would have a paralegal trained to enter that data. So one of the things I can do is I can upload a document. So here's a general summary, or maybe I give it 2 or 3 examples, upload a summary, and then I upload the client data for the client that I'm working on currently. And I said, can you prepare a summary in this format for this client? That's one way to get a document in my style. I've also done that with presentations. So let's say I recently presented on asset protection. I uploaded the last 5 outlines and said, can you create an outline in the style in which I write, but include these new issues and this information? So you can get it to prepare an outline that looks more like an outline that you would normally prepare. So data source layer would be the next thing. So the first level I'm talking about is just kind of if you just stay with that large language model, but Copilot, Chat GPT, and most AI systems have additional ways to help you go ahead and get it more personalized. So you can basically create a system of past documents, outlines, summaries, and letters. And what I would suggest is be sure you pick some that you think these are really good examples of my work. And I've been humbled a couple times in the process of doing this by thinking my work was really, really good. And then asking Copilot or another AI system for suggestions and going, oh, wow, I should have thought of that. So that's a great way to use it. And what I do is I don't actually ask it to draft documents. I put a document in and ask it for suggestions. Then I'm less susceptible to hallucinations or weird language showing up in my documents. I'm still consciously making the decision at this point. But you can create a data source layer. So Copilot Studio, you can create a database and you can do a connection between your database and Copilot. There's what you call a custom semantic index, which helps connect meaning and relationships. So this is all, I'm not going to go into this in detail today because it gets pretty complex and very technical. And beyond just talking about some basic uses, my main point is just know that you have to kind of layer to actually personalize. You can create some prompt templates for Copilot when you write. So you can say, hey, when drafting for Mary Vandenack, just realize that I'm an attorney and I generally want to use professional language, but I want to have an approachable tone. I want it to be balanced between technical and explanatory. By the way, sometimes I will ask Copilot to draft something that a fourth grader could understand. Is what I was taught about lawyering is that a great lawyer can make the complex seem simple. Treat AI like an associate. You can have it generate a draft. I really will only generate drafts if I'm doing a letter or something simple. If I'm drafting a trust or a more complex document, I'm going to use a starting point of a document. But let's say that you're asking an associate to draft a basic letter or an explanation of a GRAT. You could ask AI to go ahead and generate that draft. You would revise it to your standards. You save both versions, and then you can refresh your AI system on, okay, here's an example of a draft that I had and how I revised it. Can you do revisions similar to the revisions that I did in this case? Keep in mind that you always want privacy and compliance built into any AI system that you use. So I'm going to talk about just some super simple practical steps you can do today. So AI disclosures and disclaimers in engagement letter. This I will mention that exactly what you have to disclose and what you have to say about AI. There's ethical guidance out there. It does vary by state. We have some states that have issued some very detailed guidance. We do have an ABA policy out there, and I'm going to leave those to Natalie to talk about if that's what she's planning on talking about. So, but thing is, create a firm AI policy. Be confident that anybody that's working in your firm is using AI, whether the tool is approved or not. So have a policy. We're definitely responsible for the AI, whether it's ourselves, an associate, or an assistant who using it. So if we're telling them not to use it, you can count on that they're going to use it. In the pandemic, we had a real issue with those working at home using their own systems, downloading software that wasn't approved by the firm. Same thing with AI. So have a policy, communicate it. Another simple thing to try is to have AI draft an email to a client. I do use it for that for a first draft. I'm still editing those drafts most of the time, but AI is getting better and better at understanding what I like to draft. So I was actually looking for some funny words the other day, and it said, oh, by the way, Mary, do you want me to come up with some funny estate planning words? And I wasn't actually working at the moment. So but my point there is AI does get to know who you are and the user. And by the way, this is just a little off, but one of the things that you get warned about is AI biases. And my suggestion is great. there are biases in AI. Use them to your advantage. So use them to improve your profile. So I go into AI and I'll say, well, I'd like to rewrite my LinkedIn profile, and it'll come up with a first draft. And then I will give it suggestions about who I really am and some things I really do. And I think about the clients I want to attract, or who I want to attract, or who I want to have call me. And I will ask that my bio be revised in accordance with that. So use those biases in your favor. You can have AI create trust summaries. So I like to send clients a summary of the trust that we just wrote. A lot of my trusts get to be 40, 50 pages sometimes. And instead of having a client try and read through the provision, here's another example of where I personalize it by uploading a trust summary that I created. So I have a particular format that I've created that I really like, that I find usable. And I will upload that summary and then ask Copilot or whatever AI I'm using to create a summary similar to the one that I did. And it gets pretty good results. I will then ask it to offer suggestions to improve the summary to make it more client friendly. And again, much to my humbling, it's offered some really good suggestions for me, and I've quite improved what I send out as a summary. So ask AI to offer suggestions to improve your estate planning intake form. So we all have an intake form, and I put that through AI. So we have huddles regularly with my team, and we were talking about how should we improve this intake form. And the group was struggling a little bit. I'm like, okay, let's just upload this to AI and get the help, use that to get the brainstorming started. Once we got the brainstorming started, the team started to come up with things that AI hadn't suggested. So it's a great brainstorming tool as well. Another practical step that I think you can start thinking about today is just the concept of what is my fee model? So our ethical rules say if you bill hourly, even if you start cutting your time on a project in half, you still can only bill the number of hours consumed. So if you think about using flat, or I call them process-oriented fees, then you can benefit from AI. And let's say that you actually do dramatically improve your time. What I've always done when I improve my efficiency with any form of technology is I want some of the benefit in terms of I've made an investment in time to do that, and I'll give the client some of the benefits. So, this in 2026, I have some standard fees that I charge for certain types of trust documents. And hopefully, as I improve in the use of AI for those, I'll be able to lower the price and improve my profitability at the same time. Okay, practice prompting skills. So really superb prompting skills really help. So give context. So I was talking with one lawyer who says, I don't know why AI isn't getting me. And so we played with some things. And in his case, he said, well, I'm an estate planning lawyer with a CPA, an MBA, JD, and these multiple credentials. So when I ask you questions that are for me, what I want you to do is give me highly technical explanations. And so that helped improve the answers that he was getting. Now, keep in mind, if we're using just a large language model, it is not necessarily going to remember that. So you may want to remind it. The other thing is that if you want a different tone, I am drafting a newsletter to a client or a letter to a client explaining how OBA is impacting their estate planning for 2026. You might say, so I am writing this, and again, I want to make the complex simple. So I'd like my client to be readily able to understand this. Be specific. So for example, I want to provide the explanation to a retired estate planning client with philanthropic goals. When you get the first result, follow up. And actually, AI will often give you suggestions on how it might follow up, and you can look at those. You can also ask AI, by the way, how to improve your prompts. So if you're not having success with prompts, say, Dear AI, I'm not getting the best results. Here are some prompts that I submitted. The results weren't satisfactory. This is what I was trying to achieve. can you help me improve my prompting? And you'll get some pretty good responses. You can give directions about how you want your answer formatted, and AI often will also offer up options. Okay, making email easier. So again, this was in the area of sort of my simple things, but Copilot can draft, summarize, organize, set up reminders, automate, translate emails for you if you do international work, and it can improve your email content. Here's just a simple email request. And I actually did this because we are returning signed original documents to client. And I had a legal assistant write the first draft, and it was basically read something like this. Hey, here's your documents. We're not keeping them anymore. I'm being a little facetious. But what I wanted to tell the client was, hey, we are returning clients, returning emails to or returning original documents to clients. We're no longer retaining them. So this was the first draft. And so we improved it. Can you create bullet points to identify the documents that we're sending back? These are the typical documents. Also, let the client know that we are saving the documents electronically and we can provide them access via a portal. So explaining why we're returning the signed original documents, because I got one call from a client. It's like, what? Are you firing me? So this is the second draft of that letter, much improved. Our team, remains fully engaged. Hey, and what we do if the client is actually due for a meeting, and you have to be careful about this because I found if you suggest a meeting to review the estate plan, they get a almost 90% scheduling rate, sometimes higher. So don't offer it with every letter that you send. Another, have you ever gotten an email like this? Hey, I'm getting really frustrated that I haven't gotten your documents yet. I keep getting big bills, but no product. And so, I've been having a bout with thyrotoxicosis, and one of the symptoms, sadly, is irritability. So if I got an email like this, I'm like, hey, how I want to reply is, oh my gosh, my mom died this year. I have thyrotoxicosis. Leave me alone. Well, I don't really want to say that. So I'm like, Copilot, can you help me respond to this email in a positive fashion? And Copilot can do a nice job of that. Another one of the features that I really love about Copilot is summarizing email threads. So have you ever had a client who they send you email number 1 and then they think of something else and they send you email number 2, or maybe an associate or a legal assistant? Although in our huddle, I remind them, just open an email and don't send it till you have all your thoughts in there. With clients, it's harder to say, hey, can you send me one email instead of 50 today? But it's a common thing that you'll get multiple emails from a client on the same topic. So this having a Copilot summarize a thread of emails is a really useful tool. And I've given the directions on how to do it. And I used an example because I couldn't obviously use confidential client emails. I'm a big New York Liberty fan and actually have a mini season ticket package to go to New York Liberty games. It was my first WNBA game many years ago. And so they send me a lot of emails about what's going on. And so here's what Copilot did for me. It pulled all of the New York Liberty emails and told me what was in them. AI can also proofread. How many times have you looked at a sent email? So once upon a time, or at least when I started practice, we actually dictated, somebody typed it, somebody proofread it, then it came back to me for a final review before it got sent out. Now we write or dictate an email, and I have to admit that I really struggle with the dictated emails. For some reason, I find them harder to proof than one that I type, but it's much better for my shoulders to dictate. So you can ask AI to proofread the email, and you can actually ask it to offer you suggestions on how to make it more clear. And sometimes it just volunteers these things, and it can actually be quite annoying. I asked, and this I used ChatGPT just to show a different AI program. I wanted a client letter explaining my estate planning process. This is what it came out with without me feeding it any more than that simple request. It actually wasn't bad, which means that somebody out there has some letters. It's, the AI scrapes the web and finds this stuff. And by the way, because it does scrape the web, it finds bad stuff too, which is why you do carefully need to review. If I wanted to improve this, let's say I've written a letter numerous times on my estate planning process. So I would go into Copilot and I would offer up, here is a letter I've written in the past. Can you suggest on how I can improve this letter, explaining the process to clients? Which I might use in conjunction with an engagement letter. AI does offer follow-up options. So I would just say they're at the end. They've gotten better and better, the various programs, the various AI that I use in terms of what it offers as follow-up. Another one I just played with was asking for, hey, major changes under OBA affecting estate planning. So you can create client summaries. Now, one of the things that it was actually a client who taught me, I always send personalized summaries to clients rather than sending them a newsletter. I had a client say to me once, hey, this is all nice. You sent me this newsletter telling me about all the law changes, but you're expecting me to figure out which ones apply to me. So I generally might create a summary, and I've actually created a database in my system. I joined a new firm, so it's not quite as, but we still have it in place. But I create a profile on each client. And that profile says, does this client have an LLC? Does this client have an estate that's taxable for estate tax purposes? Which right now we use that database for a value because we've had so many changes, in our very permanent estate tax, which I laugh every time. That's why I bolded it on this slide, because I just sort of kind of laugh at the word permanently at this point. Now, this particular offered me the source as Mintz and Goodwin Law Firm. So when you're reviewing this tax summary example, I don't know who Mintz and Goodwin are. Maybe they're a great law firm and totally accurate, and maybe not. I'd be verifying these in the statute rather than relying on this particular summary, but just wanted to give you an idea of a quick and simple thing that you could do. This, going through what changed, what did not change, so you can create summaries. Then you can create that summary and say, hey, I need to know specifically about Maryland law. Can you tell me a little bit about this? Now, asking it just that as a prompt would not be very effective, by the way. So you go back to the prompting screen, and I would say more specifically, I happen to know that Maryland does have an estate tax. And so can you give me some specifics on, and I would identify some of the things that were in the newsletter and say, can you give me some thoughts very specific to Maryland law on, A, B, C. So how would I structure a trust in Maryland, or what should I tell the client about that in terms of speaking to them about Maryland? Or recently I was at a presentation where I was hearing about what you do if you're in Oregon, where there's $1 million estate tax. So Maryland has basically a Q-tip that works for, creates a credit shelter for federal estate tax purposes and a marital deduction for Maryland estate taxes. Oregon doesn't have that. So when I was playing with this, I was kind of looking at some of the states just to find whether it would give me information relative to some of those states. You could ask Copilot or ChatGPT to give you a plain English explanation of a GRAT. You can use that if you're trying to create an explanation. I mean, hopefully you actually have a draft of this if you do it on a regular basis, and you would upload that and ask for an explanation similar. But another way I do use this is actually to train associates. So instead of me explaining a GRAT to an associate for the first time, I tell the associate just a little bit about a GRAT, ask them to go spend some time with AI and maybe even good old fashioned Google and maybe our research system, and educate yourself a little bit on a GRAT, and then come back in and let's talk specifically about the client. So here was the slide that was created by AI. So it gave me a more detailed summary. Then it said, would you like me to create a slide? So this was a slide. I didn't edit this, just so you know, I would if I were actually using this, but I was just showing you the starting point that you get from AI. I also use a lot of schematics So this is a schematic that was created by AI following the discussion about the GRAT. Okay, it's usable. Would I hand this to a client? No, but you can also take this same, and I just wanted to show you your starting point, but the graphs and images in AI actually are getting pretty fantastic. So you could ask AI to add colors to certain boxes and to differentiate shapes and numerous things. So you can start creating some really great schematics through AI and improve what you're showing. If you have schematics that you love that you have done in the past, upload those and ask ChatGPT or Copilot to revise the schematics or whatever you're using to align with your personal style. Copilot and Excel. So you can use Excel to create a net worth summary from assets and liabilities of a client. You can use it to create projections. You can make a pie chart of asset classes. You can do some really cool things. I have a particular approach to creating a base schedule of assets for an estate plan, as well as for an estate administration, and they're different, and have tried uploading my spreadsheet and saying, can you create me something similar to this with this data? Now, this is one of the places that people will get a little confused about how Copilot and other AI systems can screw up. So remember that discussion about the closed system. So the tendency is to think, oh, my system is closed. So I'm putting in financial data about John Doe, and I'm asking for a schedule of assets for John Doe. Well, to the extent the previous day you uploaded information for Donald Duck, it is still possible that your closed system will pull Donald Duck's information into John Doe's schedule of assets. So you do need to check that. That is the fashion in which people overlook that you're not going to get these completely accurate information because the information you've been uploading is still in your system. So it's not a complete fresh start every time, even though you have a pre-trained model. So there's a couple fine distinctions that you need to be aware of. So safe and ethical implementation, I can't stress enough how important it is to use secure approved platforms. So it is fun, and I admit I have multiple AI systems. There's one that's trying to emulate human empathy, things like that. I love to play with them. One of the favorite things I did is, so I'm at a life stage where a lot of my favorite musical artists are retiring or dead even. And so I thought, well, I love going to concerts, so I need to find young artists. So I input all of my favorite artists from the 80s and 90s and ask for a playlist of more modern artists that might have music in that style. So I can go do that in Chat GPT, and I'm not going to violate anybody's confidentiality or any issues. But if we're dealing with anything client related, so people say, can I ask general questions? The answer is yes, you can ask general questions to open AI. But be careful because remember the rule on confidential is don't disclose so much information that it would be that somebody could identify the client. So my favorite example of that is going to a football game early in my career, and this was a lesson I've never forgotten. And I was talking about a situation, absolutely not identifying. And somebody behind me says, oh, you must be talking about so and so. And I remember I wanted to shrink, die, and crawl under the bleacher. And I can't remember. I think I suddenly needed to use the restroom or get a, Diet Pepsi very quickly. But that's the same thing with AI. So don't kid yourself that it's okay to enter information or facts without entering the name of the client. Just don't put stuff out there on OpenAI that could identify a client. I'm an advocate of saying, hey, let's have a real conversation about automating the entire estate planning process. Your process might look different from mine. I'm just kind of saying, all right, if I'm going to look at this, can we use it for conflict check and screening, engagement letter? And I've just added a link here to the ACTEC resource, which is open to anyone, this particular resource on how to cover AI in your engagement letters. So rather than trying to cover in the slides, because again, it varies by state, but there's a group that's put together some good information on what you should include in your engagement letter. But these are the different things that I'm thinking about. Okay, some of these I have automated personally in my life before AI, and saying, well, now I'm going to be able to use some of that structure and string them together with AI, hopefully even more efficiently and ultimately profitably, more creating a more accurate product for clients, doing a higher level. I'm all about a high level of client service, helping them understand, delivering a product that looks good, that they see, oh, this is why I'm writing the check to pay this bill. Management of digital assets such as cryptocurrencies, social media, cloud storage. I listened to a presentation on this the other day. I'm going to acknowledge this is not, the cryptocurrency is not totally my expertise, but after listening to a presentation on that related to estate planning, it is important, and there are AI tools to help manage those particular things. The challenges of AI, hey, it is evolving really rapidly. The privacy concerns, I've really talked about those. The unreliable results, so the hallucinations and false answers. Just know when that's going to happen. Kind of expect it to happen. So you're really using your critical thinking skills so that you're saying, what kind of answer am I actually expecting? There's some of the cases on AI that are related to artificial intelligence, and is noted those have been increasing. There's a bunch of state opinions. And again, I'm going to leave those ethical issues to Natalie. So just going to blow through those for now. I've created what I call the firm playbook for AI implementation. And I will acknowledge that every presentation I give, this kind of changes, but this is sort of where I am on this right now. So step one, create an AI committee. If you're a solo, okay, it's you. Develop your AI policy. What is our policy? So again, people are using it. Evaluate AI needs. Or remember the attorney I mentioned who said, my phone is ringing off the wall. So why should I use AI? And I shared with him a story when I first started using technology and automating things, which I've been doing for a very long time. And so it's probably about 20 years ago. And somebody said, Mary, what is the market force that is driving your use of technology? And I said, actually, I'm pretty busy. The phone's ringing off the wall, but what I want to do is be able to improve my realization rate and the quality I provide for clients. So it's more about what I want to do and the fact I'd like to make a little more, a little faster, and have a better lifestyle. Evaluate AI platforms. Again, the platform that's right for your friend or peer is not necessarily going to be the one for you. Try a pilot program. Pick something simple like automating a particular letter using AI, learning how to use your email. The data classification I've talked about, so public, internal, confidential, highly confidential, those drive what and how you use it. Most important, it should be about what do clients want to receive? So it's really easy. Hey, I love doing this type of trust. So I want every client I work with to want this type of trust. Well, the real answer to how to use AI is to figure out what it would look like to the client. What would an AI enhanced client experience look like? So if I'm saying I'm providing an AI enhanced estate planning experience, well, there's my vision of that, but that doesn't matter so much as how the client's going to perceive it. So spending some time with clients about how you could improve your delivery. I know that we as lawyers, we hate doing surveys and asking how we did. But surveys are good, and you want to be a 5-star attorney who gets 5-star ratings, or at least 4.9, because somebody's going to give a negative review no matter how hard you try. Training and education. Create the firm policies. I'll review them all the time. I've got annually, but maybe even more often. We have just a team, we have teams in our firm. Our team talks about this every single huddle that we have. Education, supervising, test drive with non-confidential data, do audits, review the vendor agreements, but stay current with the ethical landscape. Pilot projects, again, start small. Whatever it is that you do on a regular basis, think about, what do I do? Like, I'm really using this to take the stuff that I like. What I really love doing is talking with clients and thinking about really hard things. I like the stuff that just, oh, I want to pull my hair out. This question is so hard to think about. So I want to spend less time on even schematics and flowcharts. Hey, those are important because I want to illustrate to clients what we are doing. But I do want to spend less time doing those because I'm like, oh, me drawing boxes, I'm not very arty. I am 100% left brain. So I've been using AI to create visual schematics and flowcharts. It's hugely helpful. Use AI to improve your checklist. So I have a long time estate planning checklist. And one of my favorites that we did recently is we had this document we give clients for funeral and burial instructions. I collaborated. At one point, I represented a funeral home and they brought me their stuff. We did that. Then I had people asking for death books, and here I'd like you to keep track of more information. So we asked AI to review and help us improve that particular document, and AI did a great job. Internal knowledge management. So the way, like, we have NetDocs and we talk about how can you tag documents, how can you classify documents so that we can find all memos. So I used to have a system where we would put tags on every memo for subject matter so that instead of me researching the issue that one of my partners or an associate researched 2 weeks ago, I can readily find the research that somebody else did. Maybe pilot an assisted bot to collect family and asset data. I haven't been a big bot user because I personally am the one who clicks the bot off when I get on it, but some people love bots. So if it works for you. Better form automation is another project that is worth taking on. Again, start with something simple. I will tell you what I did at my firm. I think I have huge respect for the estate planning attorneys that have been gathered by my firm. It's just like an amazing brain trust. And so, do I have time to read all of their documents? If I could, I would just spend a weekend or longer reading or reviewing some of the work that they've done. But what I did do was say, well, okay, here's a trust I've done, and here's a trust that one of my partners did, and here's a trust another one of my partners did. And what I asked AI to do for me was to give me suggestions on how I could improve my trust document based on what AI saw in my partner's documents. And so again, I didn't ask it to draft the trust. So saying, hey, take, one thought I originally had was, well, just take the best of each of these trusts and put those all together. And if I had done that, I probably would have had a disaster. So instead I said, okay, so again, how to use AI. Be careful about having it draft complex documents. But I took my trust and said, hey, tell me what you see in these other trust documents that are provisions I might want to consider. So then my critical thinking was to review that output and say, does that make sense? Does that really help? So then I have this, and it was actually the ABA recently, and they did this, hey, 21 days to improving your use of AI. And so I thought, well, I'm doing a lot of presentations on this. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to take a look at this. And I was a little disappointed at first. Oh, this is too basic. But then as we went through the 21 days, it got him. I really liked it. And so I'm running out of time on my hours. So I'm going to finish with this. But choose your AI tool. So again, really important to figure out. Maybe it's a firm needs to pick the AI tool that works for the firm. Maybe different departments use different AI tools. Ask AI to help you learn how to use the tool and teach others how to use it. practice prompting. There's a lot of information out there on prompting. I can't tell you how important it is to get really good at prompting. Use AI to write something. So I talked about that in my simple example. Generate an image. I have done this and created some amazingly beautiful images that are just like almost artwork, that I would before draw on a notepad. And so if I could take some of these things I draw out for clients on notepads and put them into, something that's much better to look at, and AI has really helped me do that. Data analysis and research, again, always verifying. Train your AI to work for you. So I gave some ideas on this. Explore bias. And as I mentioned, you can use that to your advantage. It doesn't have to be like this terrible thing, but know the bias of your system. Find a way to use it. Use AI as a coworker and challenge it to replace you. Hey, I want you to replace me. As a professor, and that's again where I use that to train AI and legal assistants. They'll come ask me, I need some training on this. I'm like, great, open up your AI system and start asking some questions, and then schedule a meeting with me and let's talk about what you learned, and then we'll refine it. Use AI as a coach, as a meeting planner, create meeting agendas. Take the last meeting agenda you did, have it create, assist you with negotiation, understand the polarities, and obviously the continuing need for human oversight. Improve communication, presentations, I use it for all of it. Redefining leadership skills and that are important to your firm. For adaptive leadership, reframing conversations. So I hate the word hard conversations, but it is an appropriate one. But a hard with compassion and empathy, AI can help us do that. Those are difficult things to do because we get our boundaries up. Collaboration, develop agentic AI. This helps us collaborate with other professionals as well. And I'm just going to go towards the end. I have this formal opinion in here. And again, that's going to be covered by Natalie. I think you can align fees with AI and work towards improving your realization. I provided some examples in here that you can use that are just saying, hey, if I want to go a little deeper, I've given some examples on how I use AI. As you look at any of these, I'll tell you that some of the prompting's simple, and I'll start that way, and then I'll elaborate on my prompts and see what AI gets me. And it's to help me learn, how do I really improve the way that I use AI? And I outlined in the slides kind of what I'm looking to do in the agentic AI. So the last presentation, I was asked, hey, are you going to then license that? So we'll see how that goes. But the last comment I want to make is on remaining relevant. So do think about creating the AI enhanced legal experience. That will allow you to spend more time on the human side and deepen personal skills. I know that my estate planning practice is all about relationships, and it's the same with other professionals. Those relationships are so important. I love focusing on complex legal issues, creates the opportunity, build new value propositions, become an expert in the ethics of AI, and be part of shaping policy. It's my belief that those lawyers who combine human judgment, emotional intelligence, ethical leadership, combine that with AI-enabled efficiency and insight, are not only going to remain relevant, but will be the ones that thrive. So thank you very much. And since I wasn't there in person, here's my contact information. I'd be glad to take calls, questions, or set up a call with anybody who would like to chat a little bit more about AI. I always love to hear how you're using AI and how I can improve my presentation. Thanks for listening very much, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.